Hello everyone, and welcome to GCSE English Language How to Answer Paper 1 Section A. Let's start by looking at the assessment objectives. So for Paper 1 Section A, we're going to be assessed on AO1, AO2 and AO4. AO3 is not assessed in this section. Now the language assessment objectives are quite different to the literature assessment objectives. AO1 is being able to identify and interpret explicit and implicit information. Explicit means obvious, and implicit means being able to read between the lines. For AO2, you have to comment on how the writers use language and structure, which you should already be familiar with in literature. And for AO3, which is not assessed, is just being able to compare writers' ideas, which will be for comparison essays. And AO4 is being able to evaluate texts critically and supporting this with references. So here's a mark and time division for Paper 1. So for Paper 1, which is the fiction part of language, explorations in creative reading and writing, you have a total of 1 hour and 45 minutes. There's two sections, Section A, which is the reading section, and Section B, which is a writing section. But we also need to factor time in for reading and planning, which I've added 15 minutes for. So minusing the 15 minutes, you then have 1.5 hours, which I would advise 45 minutes on Section A and 45 minutes on Section B. For Section A, which we'll focus on in this video, there are 4 questions. 1, which is 4 marks, 2, which is 8 marks, 3, which is also 8 marks, and 4, which is 20 marks. Let's look at what the question will look like. So for question 1, you'll be given a fiction extract to read from the 20th to the 21st century. Aim for no longer than 10 minutes reading time. We don't want to waste reading time. And then you're going to be given the question, which is for number 1, it's read again the first part of the source from lines whatever to ever and list 4 things about a character or theme. This is only 4 marks. And this is AO1, so implicit and explicit information. You're going to have to read between the lines and also pick out the obvious information. It's relatively straightforward, so you shouldn't try and take longer than a mark per minute, which is 4 minutes. This is an example of that question. Read again the first part of the source from lines 1 to 5 and list 4 things about Zoe's surroundings. What question 2 looks like? Question 2 is an 8 marker, so you should spend 8 to 10 minutes. It will look like, look in detail at this extract from lines this to this of the source. How does the writer use language here to describe theme or character? You could include the writer's choice of words and phrases, language features and techniques, and sentence forms. Now typically, the extract is no longer than 6 lines. So you have to analyse sort of a short paragraph looking at how the writer uses language to describe that character or theme. This is all about AO2, which is explaining, commenting on, analysing how writers use language and structure. However, the difference is you're more going to be asked to talk about how it's used rather than the analysis of each word. You're roughly expected to write 2 to 3 paragraphs of language analysis, and since it's fictional, you can write about the effects the writer was trying to create and why he chose them. Now you must talk about the effect on the reader. This is an example of the question 2, so you have a short extract. How does the writer use language to describe Zoe's feelings? And that's how many lines you have. So 2 to 3 paragraphs seems appropriate. Question 3. Question 3 is an 8 marker. You should also spend 8 to 10 minutes like question 2. The difference is that you have to think about the whole of the source. It's from the beginning, end or middle of the novel, and how has the writer structured the text to interest you as a reader. So again, this is AO2, talking about how the writer uses language and structure to achieve effects. And they say you can write about what the writer focuses your attention on at the beginning, how and why the writer changes this focus as the source develops, and any other structural features that intersects you. Apologies for the spag mistake at structural. So here is a really helpful table which I suggest you take note of, because here we're more asked how has the writer structured the text, which we're not familiar with in literature. Now, structure is how a text begins, develops and ends. So you need to think about all of the following topics, such as setting, narrator, character, atmosphere, events and overall. And you need to write about all of these in your 2 to 3 paragraphs of language analysis. You need to look at conventions that hook the reader, and you need to make sure that you write about all the aspects on this table on the right. So setting is, how do we know when and where the book is set? The narrator is first, third or person narrator. Character is, who's the main character, how is it introduced, is it immediately? Atmosphere is it light or dark, does it change? Events, what happens? And overall. This is an example of question 3, and that's how many marks you get. How has the writer structured the text to interest you as a reader? That's always going to be in that question. And finally, question 4, which is a 20 marker, so you should spend around 20 minutes on it. Focus this part of your answer on the second part of the story where something happened. To what extent do you agree? In your response, you can consider the following. Evaluate how the writer makes it something, and support your response with references to the text. So I would suggest begin with an opinion. I agree or I disagree. But try to show variation in your response and not hog that opinion. Try and show that you understand the other opinion too. How the text can sometimes show the opposite to your opinion. Suggested 4 to 5 paragraphs analysing language and structure, and a small conclusion talking about the extent you agree or disagree. This is about AO4, which is evaluating text critically. This is an example. So a student said, whatever that statement, and to what extent you agree. So yeah, you're going to be given a statement which normally a student says, and then you're going to have to talk about what extent you agree. So thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, be sure to subscribe, and for more advice, actually my Instagram's changed to @NoWaffle GCSE. I know I didn't go in depth through every single question, but I will be doing that and showing you how to answer in future videos. So thank you for watching, and see you soon.